She had not eaten in front of anyone in 31 years, and the first person she ate in front of was a maintenance contractor eating a ham sandwich on the floor of a broken elevator. His name was Ray Kowalski. He was 51 years old. He had a bad knee from a fall off a scaffold in 2019 that he had never gotten properly looked at because the timing had never been right, and then the timing had never been right again, and then several years had passed and now it just hurt and he had made his peace with that. He had a daughter in Pittsburgh named Megan who was studying to be a physical therapist, which Ray privately considered the universe's way of being funny. He had been eating the same lunch for 6 years. Ham, mustard, no cheese on sourdough, wrapped in wax paper with a side of whatever chips were on sale. Today it was salt and vinegar. He had been contracted to service the elevator banks at the Interstellar Trade Concourse in what used to be downtown Detroit, which was now a thing people called the Hub. Not officially, just in the way that large, complicated things get called simple names when they become too big to describe. The Hub was where the new commerce happened, the kind that involved species and currencies and legal frameworks that had not existed 12 years ago. The elevators in the original structure were human-built, and they were old, and they broke down in the specific way that human-built things from the 2020s broke down. Not catastrophically but persistently, with a kind of low-grade stubbornness that made you feel like the machine had opinions about being fixed. Ray had been called in because elevator bank C, car 3, had stopped between floors 14 and 15 at 8:40 in the morning and had not moved since. This was, his dispatch told him, complicated by the fact that the elevator currently contained one passenger. The passenger, he was further told, was Empressarbiter Sevain Tal Dorath of the Dorath sovereignty. Ray had said huh and gathered his tools. He had heard of her, of course. You could not work in the Hub and not hear of her. She was the political architect of the Second Accord, the one that actually worked as opposed to the First Accord, which had lasted 4 years before falling apart over a trade dispute involving mineral rights on a moon that no one had previously considered worth fighting over. She commanded 17 systems. She had negotiated the Calith ceasefire personally, in a room with beings who had been trying to kill each other for longer than humans had written language, and she had emerged from that room after 9 days with a document that held. She was, depending on who was doing the describing, either the most dangerous politician in known space or the most necessary one, and the people who said the first thing usually meant it as a compliment. She was also, Ray discovered when he opened the emergency access panel above car 3 and looked down through it, sitting on the floor of the elevator with her back against the wall and her very long legs stretched in front of her. She was tall, the Dorath were always tall, with the attenuated proportions of beings evolved for lower gravity, limbs that moved with a deliberate elegance that humans often mistook for slowness until they watched one of them for long enough. Her skin was a deep violet brown, with a faint nacreous quality in the right light, and her hair, which humans called hair because it was the nearest word, though it was nothing like hair, was a structured arrangement of something dark and dense that framed her face with architectural precision. She was wearing something that was clearly formal and clearly damaged. One of the outer panels torn along the shoulder seam in a way that she appeared to be ignoring completely. She looked up at him through the access panel with eyes that were the dark gold of an October afternoon, steady and entirely without alarm. "I'm going to need to come down there," Ray said. She looked at him for a moment. "Is that necessary?" It was not quite a question. "I can't fix it from up here," he said. "Sorry." A pause. He watched her make the decision not to accept his presence exactly, but to not object to it. There was a difference, and she did not try to make it look like something else. "Oh, come down," she said. He got down through the access panel, dropped the last few feet, and landed with the controlled awkwardness of a man whose bad knee expressed opinions in loud, nonverbal ways. He straightened. The elevator car was small and from the inside smelled faintly of something that was not any scent he knew, something cool and mineral, like stone after rain, but not quite that. He looked around the car. Emergency lighting, Control panel on the east wall showing a fault code he recognized. A single security detail member, a Dorath male, enormous, stationed near the doors, who was watching Ray with the specific focused attention of someone whose job was to make certain that watching was the only thing that needed to happen. Ray looked at the impresarbiter who was looking at him. Ray Kowalski, he said, contracted maintenance. I'll be out of your way as fast as I can manage. Well, Seven, she said. He blinked. It took him a second. I know who you are, ma'ams. Then you know more than is comfortable, and we are starting poorly, she said. In small spaces, I prefer names to titles. He considered this, Ray, he said. Seven, she said again, as if they were starting over. He understood they were. He went to the control panel and opened the service cover. The fault code was a sensor mismatch on the leveling system. The car was sitting correctly technically, but one of the old sensors was reading it as 3 centimeters lower than it was, and the safety interlock had locked the door as a result. A mechanical disagreement between old systems and new sensors, the kind of thing that happened when you put a century-old building to new purposes. Well, he could fix it. It would take about 20 minutes. Well, he said so. She nodded once and appeared to settle into the floor with the ease of someone who had waited for things in worse places. The security detail member, Ray, did not learn his name at any point, and it would have felt wrong to ask, remained standing. Ray got to work. It was 9 minutes before either of them spoke again. Ray was lying on his back with his upper body inside the maintenance access at the base of the control panel, doing the kind of work that required both hands and the ability to swear quietly in Polish, which he did twice before he found the sensor housing. You are not afraid, Sevin said from across the car. He stopped what he was doing for a moment. Of what? Of me or of this situation? I have been here for approximately 2 hours, and every being who has communicated with me through the external panel has been operating at a significant elevation of stress hormones. You are not. Ray worked the sensor housing loose. I don't know enough about you to be afraid of you personally, he said, not impolitely, and elevators I know very well, so. A pause. That is an unusual response. Is it? He found the fault. It was exactly what he thought, a grounding issue on the sensor lead, probably been intermittent for months. I find that usually the things people are afraid of are things they don't understand. Most of my job is taking things apart until I understand them well enough that they stop being scary. He heard very faintly from across the car, something that might have been a sound of consideration. He worked in silence for another few minutes. He got the sensor lead freed from its faulty grounding point, reached into his kit for a replacement clip, and then realized, with the specific clarity of a man who has been on a job since 6 in the morning and has been focusing intently, that he was hungry. He looked at his watch. It was 12:40. He had missed lunch by a substantial margin. He sat up out of the maintenance access and stretched his back and looked at the car. Sevin was watching him. The security detail was watching him. The emergency lights made everything a particular shade of amber that reminded him of certain evenings in a bar in Detroit where he had spent some time in his 30s, learning things he had needed to learn. He reached into his kit bag and pulled out his lunch, which was wrapped in wax paper and had been sitting there since he packed it at 5:30 this morning. He unwrapped half of it and ate it standing up, leaning against the wall of the elevator, because his knee did not want to get back onto the floor just yet. The sandwich was slightly compressed from being in the kit bag, but still good. The salt and vinegar chips made a sound that seemed very loud in the small space. Well, he looked at the other halves. Well, he looked at Sevin. Well, he looked at the other half again. His mother had been a very specific kind of Polish woman who believed that the correct response to any human problem, large or small, was to feed someone. His mother had been right about very few things in his estimation, and that one thing absolutely. He had spent 51 years in situations where the correct action was to do nothing, and had frequently found that the correct action was, in fact, very small and simple and looked like nothing from the outside. He held out the other half of the sandwich. "Hungry," he said. The security detail moved. Not toward Ray, not threateningly, but a small shift of weight, a readiness, the physical language of someone recalibrating the threat level of a situation that had just changed character. Seven held up one hand, a gesture so slight it barely registered, and the security detail was still again. She looked at the half sandwich in Ray's extended hand. He could not read her expression. He was not sure that her expressions mapped onto anything he had a framework for. "That is food," she said. This was not a question. It was something else, a kind of anchoring, the verbal equivalent of looking twice at something to confirm it's real. "Ham and mustard on sourdough," he said. "My usual, sorry, I don't know if you can eat it, I don't know much about." He tried to think of how to finish that sentence without it sounding wrong and failed, so he just stopped. "I can eat most carbon-based compounds without difficulty," she said slowly, as if translating her own response from something more complicated. "Whether I do is," she paused again, "a separate matter." Ray kept his hand out. He did not push. He did not say anything else. His mother had also been very clear on the difference between offering and pressing, and he had taken that lesson further than she had intended it. Seven looked at the sandwich for a moment that stretched in a way that had nothing to do with time. Then she reached out and took it. She held it in both hands carefully, with a precision that was not delicacy so much as the action of someone doing something they had not done in a long time and were being accurate about. She looked at it. Then she took a bite. Ray ate his half. He found his chips. He leaned against the wall of the elevator and ate his lunch and did not make it into anything. After a moment, she said, "It is salty." "Yeah," he said, "sorry. I did not say that negatively." They ate in silence for a while. The emergency lighting was warm. The elevator car was still. Outside, 14 floors up, the hub continued its enormous, complicated business, and in here there was just the sound of two people eating lunch. "I have not eaten in front of another person in 31 years, Sevain said. Ray chewed his chip. "That's a long time. It is considered in my culture a significant act of vulnerability. To consume sustenance in the presence of one who is not of your blood house is to expose a state of," she considered her words. "Need is too small a word. The act of eating is, for the Dorath, an acknowledgement that one is not complete in oneself, that the world must give you things in order for you to continue. To show this to a person outside your lineage is to show them a truth about your insufficiency." Ray looked at the wax paper in his hand. He thought about that for a moment. "For us, eating with someone is how we show we trust them," he said. "It goes the other way around." She turned to look at him with those October afternoon eyes. The same act, opposite meanings. "It happens a lot, I think," he said, "between people who didn't grow up together." She was quiet for a moment. "You are a maintenance contractor." "Oh, yep. You service elevators and escalators and HVAC in about 8 buildings in the hub. I go where the job is." She looked at the space between her hands where the sandwich was. "Tell me about the first elevator you fixed." Ray blinked. "You want to hear about?" "We have time," she said, "and I find I am curious about a man who takes things apart until he understands them." He told her about the first elevator. It had been in 2004, and he had been 23 and brand new to the trade and deeply afraid of getting it wrong. And the elevator had been in a 15-story office building in Flint, and it had a grinding issue that his supervisor had told him was simple and had turned out to be anything but. He told her about the 3 hours he had spent on the problem and the specific moment when he had understood it, not as the application of knowledge, but as a genuine comprehension, the feeling of a mechanism making sense, and how that feeling had never entirely worn off in the 27 years since. She listened, she did not interrupt. The Dorath were, he would later learn from research he did after this day, a culture built around a concept that translated approximately as the obligation of full attention, the idea that when a person is speaking to you about their own experience, the correct response is not to prepare your reply but to receive what they are giving you completely, as if it is the most important thing currently happening, which, for the duration of their speaking, it is. He felt it. He did not know what it was, but he felt it. The quality of being fully listened to, without agenda, without waiting. It was not a common feeling, and he recognized it the way you recognize a word in a foreign language that you've heard once before. He finished the story. She nodded once, the slow, considered nod he was starting to read as her version of real agreement. You said, she began carefully, the moment you understood it, not applied knowledge, but comprehension never wore off. Never fully. We have a word for that. She said a word in Dorath that sounded like something between music and mathematics. It is the word for the pleasure of understanding something that resisted you, the specific satisfaction that comes only from things that were difficult. The pause. We consider it one of the highest pleasures available to a mind. We structure our education around seeking it deliberately. Ray said the word back imperfectly, and she did not correct the pronunciation in a way that was correcting, just a slight adjustment of the sound, the way a musician might tune a string. Is that what ruling 17 systems is? He asked. Things that resisted you. She looked at the far wall for a moment. When she looked back at him, her expression had shifted in a way he could not name but recognized as real. Most of it is things that never stop resisting, she said. The Calith ceasefire, the mineral rights on Surath IV, the language question, she stopped. Then more quietly, my daughter's unwillingness to speak to me for 8 years, which ended last month and which I am still learning to receive without bracing for the ending of it. Ray did not know what to do with that. He thought about Megan in Pittsburgh and the 3 years in his 40s when they had barely spoken, and the specific fear of reaching for a thing and finding your hand passed through it. 8 years is a long time to wait, he said. It is. I waited because I had done wrong things and I had no standing to demand her forgiveness before she was ready to give it. She looked at her hands. I had the ability to compel almost anything in 17 systems. I could not compel my daughter to speak to me. It was the most honest thing I had learned about power in 30 years. Well, did you fix it? He asked. I wrote letters, she said. For 8 years I wrote letters about my days, about things I was learning, about mistakes I understood only in retrospect. I did not ask her to respond. I only wanted her to know I was still. She stopped. A present, Ray said. She looked at him. Showing up, he said, even when there's nothing coming back. Yes, she said, exactly that. The elevator was quiet. He thought about the sensor lid in the control panel waiting to be finished. He thought about his knee. He thought about a woman who could end trade negotiations and broker ceasefires and not compel her own daughter, and how that was not a contradiction at all. My ex-wife and I didn't talk for 2 years, he said. Mutual stubbornness. Her funeral was in 2021 and I almost didn't go, and then I went, and her sister came up to me afterward and said, she kept all your letters, you know, everyone, and I didn't know I'd been writing letters, but I had been, just not on paper. He looked at his hands. I don't know why I told you that. Because I told you something true, she said, and true things require true things in response. This is a law we share, I think, regardless of culture. He finished the repair at 1:45. The car hummed, shuddered once, and then settled with a small, decisive click, the sound of a system agreeing with itself again. The floor indicator lit. The doors slid open to reveal level 14 and a gathering of very tense people who had been waiting with increasing urgency for 2 hours and 7 minutes. The security detail member stepped through first, which Ray had expected. Then Seven stood a long, unhurried process of unfolding from the floor, with a controlled grace that reminded Ray of the way old buildings sometimes looked better when they were moving than when they were still. She was very tall standing. She straightened her formal outer panels, including the torn one which she did not try to hide. She turned and looked at Ray, who was gathering his tools. "Ray Kowalski," she said. "Oh, ma'am." "Seven," she said, as she had said at the beginning. An insistence on the specific name, the small name, not the title. "Oh, Seven," he said. "The elevator will break again," she said. He closed his kit bag. "This one, probably in another few months. The sensors are old. I'll put it in my report." "When it does," she said, "I would like you to be the one who fixes it." He looked up at her. "I'm contracted. I go where the job is." "Yes," she said, "I am aware. I will make arrangements to ensure the job is here." He looked at her for a moment. He thought about what she was saying and what she was not saying and the difference between them, which was the size of something that didn't quite have a word in either of their languages. "Okay," he said. She turned to go, then she stopped. "My daughter's name is Varenthes," she said without turning around. "She is studying what your species calls environmental architecture. She believes that the shape of a space affects the quality of thought within it." A pause. "I told her last month in our first real conversation that I believed she was right, that in 31 years of ruling, the best thinking I ever did was in small, difficult spaces that required me to be still." She walked out into level 14. Ray stood in the empty elevator car for a moment. Then he picked up his kit bag, stepped out, and went to find the building manager to file his report. He told no one. This was not a decision he made consciously. It was simply that when he got back to the office and his coworker Martinez asked how the C-Bank call went, he said sensor fault on the leveling system, took about 20 minutes to sort, and Martinez said nice and went back to his paperwork, and that was that. There was nothing about the day that required telling. It was a job. He fixed the elevator. As he went home, he cooked something simple. He called Megan. "Oh, Hilly's dad. Hey, kiddo, how's school?" "Exhausting and good," she said, which was what she usually said. "How was work?" "The usual," he said, and then, "Hey, do you know if I have any of your mom's things, letters or anything?" The pause. "Why?" "Just thinking about her, no reasons." "I have some of her stuff, I can look." "No rush," he said, "just curious." He did not entirely know why he asked. He thought about it after he hung up, sitting in the kitchen with his third cup of coffee of the evening, which was a habit his doctor had opinions about. He thought about a woman on a floor, holding a half sandwich in both hands, doing something she had not done in 31 years in front of a person she had not known 45 minutes earlier. He thought about trust going both ways, vulnerability that went both ways. The way a thing that meant weakness in one culture meant the same thing as what another culture called trust. The way two opposite meanings could be underneath the same fact about the world. He thought about things that resisted you and the specific pleasure of understanding them. The elevator broke again in March. Ray was called. He arrived at 8 in the morning, which was earlier than he usually started, because the request had come in at 6:30 labeled priority maintenance. And when you were a contractor, you did not question priority maintenance labels. He took the stairs to level 14. He opened the access panel on car 3. He went down inside. She was on the floor again. Same position, back against the wall, long legs extended. This time there was no torn panel. This time there was no security detail inside the car, only outside it, stationed at the doors. She looked up through the access panel when he came down. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," he said. He looked at the control panel. "What happened this time?" "I do not know." The car stopped. "I waited." He opened the service cover, different fault code. He read it. Power interlock tripped, might be 10 minutes. "Acceptable," she said. He got to work. He was aware of her the way you are aware of a thing that has weight and presence and that has earned its presence. Not nervous, just aware. After a few minutes, she said, Varenthes has been accepted to a design residency in Vancouver. As he looked up from the panel, your daughters. Yes, environmental architecture. She will spend 6 months designing what they call immersive spaces. Spaces that are built specifically around the quality of thought they produce. She paused. She called me to tell me. Not a letter, he said. Not a letter, she said. A call. We spoke for 40 minutes. Ray turned back to the panel. He worked for a moment. That's good, he said. Oh yes, she said, it is. Was it hard, the call? Very, she said. I kept wanting to make it efficient, to resolve things cleanly, to treat it as a negotiation with terms and outcomes. A pause. Varenthes told me stop summarizing what I am saying, just listen to what I am saying. Ray laughed. It came out surprised, genuine. He pressed it down a little, but not all the way. My daughter tells me that, he said. It appears to be a thing daughters tell their parents. Probably for good reasons. Yes, I am beginning to think so. He found the fault, reset the interlock. The power came back with a low hum. He rechecked the sensor reading from last time, still clean, good, his work had held. Oh, she asked about you, Sevin said. Ray stopped. About me. I told her about November, about the elevator and the sandwich and the conversation. A pause. I told her because she asked me during our call to tell her something true that had surprised me recently, and that was the truest surprising thing I had. He did not know what to say to that. He stayed quiet, which felt like the correct answer. She said, Sevin continued, that it sounded like you were a person who understood that being present was not the same thing as being important, that a person could be fully present without needing the moment to be about them. She paused. She said that was rare. I agreed. Ray sat up from the panel. His knee expressed its opinion. He stretched. I just fixed the elevator, he said. Yes, she said, and offered your lunch to a stranger on the floor of a broken car, and told me something true because I told you something true, and asked nothing of it. As he looked at her, she was looking at him with those afternoon eyes, and he thought about what she had said in November about the obligation of full attention, the Dorath idea that receiving someone's words completely was its own form of respect. He thought he might be receiving something now, and that the correct response was not to deflect it. I was raised to not let people go hungry if you could help it, he said, and my mother would have been furious at me if I'd eaten in front of someone without offering. Your mother sounds formidable, Sevin said. She was about 5 feet tall and she made her own pierogi and she had opinions about everything and she was right about most of them, he said. She died in 2018. I still hear her voice when I'm doing something I shouldn't. What does she say? Usually, Raymond, what are you thinking? He smiled. She called me Raymond when she disapproved of something. The elevator gave its small decisive click, floor indicator lit. Ready. Neither of them moved immediately. In my culture, Sevin said, there is a ceremony performed at the end of a significant negotiation. Not a signing, not a declaration. A meal, shared between all parties regardless of rank, regardless of outcome. The purpose is to acknowledge that all parties in the room have, for the duration of the negotiation, been something more than their positions. Have been, she paused on the word. Persons who needed things, who ate. Ray nodded slowly. Makes sense. It is not practiced widely anymore. It is considered, a slight dry shift in her tone, inefficient. That's a shame. Yes, she said. I have been thinking about reinstating it, for the Surath IV talks in April, as a structural element of the opening session. She looked at the elevator doors. Varenthes said it was a good idea. She said any space designed around the quality of thought it produces should begin with the reminder that the people in it are people. She stood, that long, unhurried unfolding, the architectural grace of someone at home in their height. She reached into the structured folds of her outer panel and held something out to him. It was a small card, not a card exactly, more of a tile, the Doreth equivalent, a flat piece of something that was not quite ceramic and not quite glass, dark violet, with a small inscription in Doreth characters. "What is this?" he said. "A contact address," she said. "Not an official one, a personal one." She met his eyes. "For Megan. If she is studying physical therapy and her father has a knee that has been unexamined for 6 years, the IMC medical facility in the hub has a rehabilitation department that is, I am told, exceptional." Ray looked at the tiles. He thought about his mother. He thought about the way she had been right about most things. He thought about what his mother would say right now in this elevator, and what she would say was, "Raymond, take the card, don't make it complicated." Well, he took the card. "Oh, thank you," he said. "Thank you," she said, "for November. I just fixed an elevator." "Yes," she said, and her voice held something in it that he did not have the Doreth vocabulary to name, but that felt in the bones of it like the English word, exactly. She walked out into level 14. He stood in the elevator car and looked at the tile in his hand. Small, dark violet, warm from being in her pocket or whatever the Doreth equivalent of a pocket was for however long she had been carrying it. He put it in his jacket pocket and picked up his kit bag. In April, the Surath IV negotiations opened with a shared meal. Every diplomatic outlet covered it. Most of them described it as a gesture, a piece of political theater, a calculated display of accessibility. One journalist, who had been covering Sevental Doreth for 15 years, wrote that it was the first time she had seen the impresarbiter eat in public, and that she had eaten with the specific attention of someone doing something they had decided mattered. The journalist did not know what had changed. She wrote about it anyway, because she had been a journalist long enough to know that the things you could not explain were often the ones most worth writing down. Ray called Megan on Sunday. "Dad, you usually wait for me to call." "I know, I have something for you." He was sitting in his kitchen. The tile was on the table in front of him. "Do you remember me telling you about the elevator in November? The big one in the hub. The Empress Arbiter was in it." A very long pause, Dad. "Oh yeah. You fixed the Empress Arbiter's elevator." "Twice, actually." "Dad," a longer pause, "were you going to mention this?" "I'm mentioning it now." He looked at the tile. "She gave me a contact for the rehabilitation department at the IMC. She said they're good," she said. He stopped. He was not sure how to explain what she had said and why she had said it, and the full weight of a very small act that had apparently been witnessed and kept and translated into something. Practical and kind. "She knew about your school, she knew about my knee, she said it might be useful." Silence on Megan's end. He could hear her processing it the way she processed things, not out loud but very fast, visibly, in the quality of the air between the sounds. "Your knee needs to be looked at," she said finally. "As I know. You've known for 6 years. As I know. And the most powerful person in known space had to tell you." Ray looked at the tile. He thought about November. He thought about a long unfolding from the floor and October afternoon eyes and the specific feeling of being fully listened to. He thought about his mother and her pierogi and her 5 feet of absolute authority. He thought about the obligation of full attention and the things that resist you and what it felt like to finally understand them. "Your mother would have agreed with her," he said. A sound on Megan's end that was very close to laughing. "Okay," she said, "fine, send me the contact." He looked at the tile one more time. Then he took a picture of it and sent it. Outside it was March. The hub outside his window was doing its large, complicated business. Somewhere in it, he knew Elevator Banksy, Car 3, was waiting to need him again. He was okay with that. He had been fixing things for 27 years, and the feeling never wore off, the specific pleasure that came from understanding what resisted you, from taking something apart until it made sense, from the moment when all the parts agreed. He sat in his kitchen, he finished his coffee, he thought about calling his doctor. On the table in front of him, a small dark violet tile the size of a playing card caught the morning light and held it. If you stayed with Ray and Seven all the way to the end, thank you. I mean it. These stories only exist because people like you sit with them, take them seriously, and carry a little piece of them out into the rest of your day. If this one gave you something, maybe a moment in a broken elevator, or the memory of a meal shared with someone who surprised you, please subscribe. New stories come regularly, and they're all built for people who understand that the most powerful things rarely announce themselves. They just show up like Ray, like you. End of script, approximately 9,000 words.